Alright, so in this one, I want to go over mechanics I feel like could be coming, will be coming, and are already in the game that are coming in 2022, right? So, I look here at this guy's Twitter, Spoon. He is a data miner. He has a lot of, the assets already. He has just everything. He can access all data in the game at will. At least that's accessible to when the game updates, every Tuesday into Wednesday and all that, right? So he has access to everything. And there's assets, which I'm pretty sure I've touched on, but I don't think I ever showed before, where there's this, right? So we look at this video here. You see UI Goku has his gauge here. It's full, and then you keep refilling it because he's trying to test something. And then you see it's locked. Now, you see what happens. He does an auto dodge, right? And I feel like this is probably going to come sooner rather than later, because you look at all the units that have a gauge now, and even to go up a bit further, I believe he put something else out here more recently, if I could find it very quickly. Yeah, like right here, I was playing with gauge lock more since Gogeta's out. Apparently works as a cooldown, which only works for characters like Gogeta. So, it would be when a gauge is already activated, I would assume, right? Because you see his gauge is already locked right there. And then, again, rewatching the clip here, you see he's doing the arts. Okay, now it's locked after it gets activated, and then boom, he can't use his gauge for that, at least duration of it, right? And then I guess it still pops, but maybe the effect of the gauge, I guess damage inflicted wise, and whatever else it offers you, the healing as well, doesn't work, but the blue card does, I guess, because that's a different attribute that he gains. But just to show those, to kind of get into the point of, look, we already got a couple gauge units, right? You look at Sword of Hope Trunks, you look at, not really, well, Tag Goku, yes, but their thing is a little bit more unique than that, because it's not like, okay, they have a main ability as a normal unit. No, they have the tag on top of everything else they do have, right? We have Ultra Gogeta, we have UI Goku, we have LF Cell. I can't believe LF Cell is actually in this department of, I can mention him with, UI Goku, Sword of Hope Trunks, all these hype characters, and then LF Cell has it, right? But we do have this mechanic, and it seems they're going to add a lock to it, because I mean, think of how overwhelming Ultra Gogeta is right now. Think of Ultra Gogeta without his, and he's not even actually here because Ultra, different rarity. Think of this guy without his gauge, right? We look at his uniques here. I believe it's this one right here. No, it's actually the first unique, right? Fuck you too. This one, Jesus Christ, I can't click. While his character's on the battlefield, charges his own gauge every time his character uses arts, and then he gets this when the gauge is full. And it keeps happening. Every single time he gets his gauge, this happens. Now imagine a unit locked these abilities. Just look at this. Draw a special move, infinitely, restores health 50%, and key by 40. Now imagine this would happen instead. He draws the blue card, that's it. Be a lot less effective, a lot more effective for the unit locking it, right? Plus 20% damage inflicted, 50 time counts cannot be cancelled, and reduces next damage seen by 20%, which in totality, because he already has 50% damage reduction. It's actually about 60% because, you factor in the way they attribute these damage reductions. It's not actually 70%, it's more like 60%. But still, 60% damage reduction for your next combo. Then you look at other units similar to this. Sword of Hope. Like, you guys know how good Sword of Hope is post-gauge, right? He's very good. He has card draw speed, he has all these things. And, again, I don't know why they're sorted in such different categories. One's the first, one's the second. But this is what happens when he gets his gauge. Reduce enemy key by 60, restores own health by 50%, plus 4% damage inflicted cannot be cancelled, plus 4% to ultimate damage inflicted cannot be cancelled, and card draw speed. That's a lot. You're getting a lot. And imagine a unit that, when they get their gauge, none of this happens. Sure, maybe Gogeta gets his blue card because maybe that's a different attribute to him, and they don't count it as something that's a buff to the unit, rather just a card drawn where it doesn't attribute the unit in its own self, right? Because a blue card's not actually giving you a buff, it's just a blue card that you drew, right? But Trunks, and then the rest of Gogeta's unique, nothing happens. Again, just to look at more examples, you could say Cell is actually a good unit after his gauge. Well, before his gauge, he doesn't have the craziest damage inflicted, right? But after his gauge here, he gets 50% damage inflicted, reduced damage by 15% more, minus 30 cards cost, and 50% to ultimate damage. Your ultimate can nuke very hard with these units because you do have penetrate through cut. Does he actually not have penetrate? Is he the only one to not have penetrate? No, he does. You do have your cut penetration, which obviously, if a unit's covering in, they have cover cut, like let's say 40%. Let's say Gogeta 4 has 80%, his iconic 80% that he has on first combo. That goes to 50% of it, obviously on Cell at least. You know, Trunks I think goes through 100%. I think Gogeta actually doesn't go through any. And then, who else has unique gauge? Whoever else, they go through cut. I think just Gogeta is the only one because he'd be way too strong if he went through cut as well on his blue and ultimates. But this right here, Gogeta has 80%. Well, minus 50% to sustain damage cut effects, given a combo compensation exists. You're probably going to do about, you know, 70 to 80% to a Gogeta 4 with 80% cut because of this. Now, you factor in, oh, I'm not getting that full damage inflicted, that 50% more, basically 100% damage inflicted I'm not getting because I don't have my gauge. And the thing is, the effect of it is a little strange to how it was shown in those videos. It seems that when it pops, it gets locked, which would be insane, right? The concept of it maybe locking pre-pop is something I see as being more realistic, because think about it, you literally are trying to build up, like, Sword of Hope Trunks, you will not want to take hits with him, at least early combo, because he builds up cut over time, right? But you want to actually build up with him because the gauge, so you're like, I'll bite the bullet, take hits. Cell, you don't want to be just standing there charging the entire time. You don't want to waste the green card on Cell if you're not going to get that gauge because it ends the combo, right? You can't combo off his green card. But then, you got to get the gauge. And I feel like it seems we'll get a spot where maybe it's, I don't know. If it only locks when the gauge gets popped, that's very bad for a lot of gauge units. You know, every single mechanic in this game will have an anti to it. Endurance came out, we had an anti. You know, Color Wheel is a thing. We have an anti to it with type neutral units. You know, Revival came out. We have more anti-Revival units than actual Revival units, and they just kind of said, we'll stop Revival units for now, right now, because they're so weak. We can't make them so weak. Like, this little fucker, Revival Gohan's the only viable, and I quote viable, because it's not really the truest word for it, Revival unit in the game right now, and he's an LF. Like, he's returned, what, 3 times with this LF New Year's banner, but, you know, you can't really. That's not even unlimited summons, right? You have the other bait banner, which is dog shit, and then you have him returned, did he return on? No, he didn't return on these step-ups. He returned on the, Gogeta 4 and, his own banner, which, again, was bait pre-New Year's. It's like, that's the best Revival unit, yet we're in a spot where, you know, Revival's just pretty ass. Because I could even look right here, like, Evolution Blue counters it. Sword of Hope counters it. Okay, that's 2 units versus 1 already. I mean, there's more, but, you know, that's 2 units to 1 that already counter it. There's literally like 6 units that's an LF that fucking counter Revival. It's like, what the fuck? And I do feel like this gauge mechanic of locking will come, you know, if I were to theorize, I would say full power Jiren. It makes a lot of sense to me that we do get full power Jiren just because we're in a realm where January last year was a random LF. Sure, people could say Future Go on type. I personally don't think so, but a lot of people can say Future Go on type, and, you know, that's arguable, right? It was kind of random. It didn't tie into what just happened. We got Gogeta Blue, Broly, UI Goku, then we got Future Gohan. Okay, well, this could more or less tie into at least Dragon Ball Super, if I can be hopeful, where we get a full power Jiren. If not, maybe we get this type of unit that can lock a gauge. And I do feel like it'll become quick because, think of it, Revival Gohan, he came out, the best Revival unit, the best unit in the game, and then we got Evolution Blue. What was that? The next month, right? Evolution Blue was a month later. Was he not? No. We got Full Power Frieza, who wasn't anti-Revival, but he was yellow, so it helped out. But we got Evolution Blue 2 months later. 2 months! I don't know. We've had this gauge mechanic for a good while. Again, it's been over a year since UI Goku had it and introduced it to the game. I do feel like a lock and or a counter to it, which a lock would be a strong counter because locks are uncounterable. You can't counter someone that's locking you in. That's why you have units that are such high value, like Fat Boo, like Kion Khalifa have decent value because they can lock in after you hit them. You know, you just do get some bait, get tap attack, boom, get their vanish out, boom, you rush. Yamcha, same kind of thing. These units that have this lock-in, not a sub-count, but a lock-in mechanic where you can't control any attribute or negative to it, is something that is very formidable, very scary, and something that's probably going to come to... it's probably going to come sooner rather than later, because you look at how... 2022, huh? Oh, another one. We're done? Okay. Okay. Thank you! You look at... I lost my train of thought. You look at how many gauge units you already have. It seems inevitable... I lost everything from that guy. I appreciate that guy. That guy's great. It seems inevitable that we are going to get something that counters it. And, to say even more, since we got so many Endurance when Anti-Endurance came out, so many Revival when Anti-Revival was still coming out, we're going to get a lot more gauge units. To theorize just a concept, I would say... Let's say a unit that starts off as like Android 17, and then the gauge fills up, and Android 18 enters the battle, and then they have, you know, quadruple damage inflicted for the next combo. Then after that combo ends, or once you swap, boom, it's back to Android 17, or it swaps a different color, kind of like Tag Goku Gogeta, where it's like, okay, it's Android 18, now it's in, and then I, you know, do my gauge again after one combo, or whatever the fuck the restriction is. Okay, boom, both are in again, blah, 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 right? You have these ideas that can easily be accessible to the game because, well, they kind of did it, I would say, in a justice system. I don't know, because I look at Tag Goku Vegeta, and, you know, they're not, you know, God. They're very good. They don't even have a gauge, is the thing, but they have the mechanic of basically a gauge, because the Switch... I don't know what else to call it, because this is better than a gauge, right? And if they can make a unit without a gauge do what Goku Vegeta does, imagine units with a gauge that have a lot more potential, but then they actually have a counter, right? Goku Vegeta won't have a counter to them, because you can't seal their main, I believe, with a lot of units. I think Beerus and stuff don't seal mains for this specific unit, because it's not necessarily a main ability, it's a switch ability. You click the face, yes, but you're doing a switch. It says switch ability, right? That doesn't have any counterplay to it. You can always do your switch ability. There's not going to be a, oh, no switch counter, like no switch to tag unit. But just call it an anti-Goku Vegeta unit. They're not going to do that, right? At least for right now, because Goku Vegeta is 9 #1 right now. They're not going to do that shit. But the lock of gauge allows some counterplay to units that have gauge. Don't you want counterplay against Ultra Gogeta? Against Sword of Hope Trunks? You know, I'd love to not lose Ki against Sword of Hope Trunks, given there's obviously counterplays to that. You know, you kind of predict when it's going to happen. You can count how many cards it's going to take. I think it's like 4 or 5 cards before, you know, Trunks will get his gauge. You kind of, you know, play around that idea, but how about an easier concept, at least, you know, for newer players, because this game does have to cater to newer players, at least in some circumstance, where you look at some units here and they're like, okay, they're very new player friendly, kind of like Gogeta Blue, UI Goku, I would say even Super Vegeta is kind of new player friendly, Evolution Blue, if you just kind of like stay in and get pretty lucky as a new player, you can kind of just shit stomp with that, LF Broly, a lot of new player friendly units. Well, how about give a new player at least an opportunity to kind of last in this game, because, well, Gauge is a bitch. It's tough to deal with. Again, you look at Ultra Gogeta being as top tier as he is. I don't think he would be as good as he is. I would still think he's probably number 5 minimum without his Gauge. But with his Gauge, he's uncontested number 1. You know, he still has that lock-in and type neutral 2 times when someone dies, which is completely unfair, unwarranted, and ridiculous. But I do feel like he would drop down a little bit. All these units would drop down a little bit without their Gauge. I know that's such a stupid circumstance to like really point out, but it's also a thing that's somewhat realistic in the future, because again, that's already an asset. What I showed you in the beginning is all, like, I can show you it again. Like, this is already a thing, if I find the fucking tweet again, where, actually I could just use that tweet, but this is already a thing where you have your Gauge, that's it, okay? This is already an asset in the game where they can just say, no more Gauge, you can't auto-dodge, you can't get your copium shit going off, you can't get your Ultra Gogeta to get his Gauge up. Now again, we don't know if it would be an idea of, because I'm trying to conceptualize it and it's hard to think of, because for some units, it'd be nice to have, okay, like 3 times, I'll lock gauge for 10 timer counts with this unit when he enters the battlefield. Okay. So that's good against UI Goku type. But what if it's like, okay, I'll lock gauge for 10 counts when I enter the battlefield, but it's against, like, Cell. Well, that does nothing. Like, that's completely useless, because Cell gets gauge from him doing stuff, him charging, right? So I feel like there's a fine line between where they need to make it and where they need to balance the fuck out of it, because some circumstances it'll be a lot more broken than others. But what do you guys think of this? I feel like it's coming a lot sooner rather than later. If I were to predict when, I would say before Anniversary. I think we get something that blocks out unique gauge very quickly within the next few months here, and prior to Anniversary, I could say even Goku Day, because Goku Day is in May, that we can get that. It's kind of like a hype-ish time. If not Golden Week in Japan, we can get that. But I think it's along the way. I think it'll be something that changes the game forever, because you have a lot of top-tier units right now, and they're top-tier for multiple circumstances, for sure. But a big attribute to them is Trunks has gauge. You have whatchamacallit, Ultra Gogeta, who has gauge. These 2 units who are already top tier on top teams in the game, they have this mechanic, and if there's something that can stop them, given it's not going to really stop them in their whole entire tracks, but it'll make them maybe less desirable to use, it can change how the game works with who's being run, who's running who, and kind of how PvP is flowing just in that state. But let me know what you guys think of it. Do you guys think this mechanic will come soon? Do you guys think it'll be later? Who do you guys think will be the first unit to have a gauge lock? I hope it would be an LF, because if it's just some random hunky-dory banner unit shutting down my Ultra Gogeta, I'd be a little bit upset. But let me know what you guys think of all this, and yeah, if you guys think it's coming soon, let me know who, because I could think full power Jiren, but maybe it'd be somebody not hype, and I guess we'll find out. But I'll see you guys in the next one.